Welcome to the B2B Growth Blueprint podcast, where we talk with entrepreneurs, founders, and leaders at B2B services, tech, and SaaS companies to learn the systems and processes they've used to create success for their business. We'll also learn from marketing and sales experts to provide insights to help you grow your business. I'm your host, Mark Osborne, and the podcast is brought to you by Modern Revenue Strategies and their 10x ROI B2B growth guarantee. Schedule a free diagnostic call to learn the fastest path to double your B2B revenues in just 90 days. Hello, and welcome to another edition of the B2B Growth Blueprint podcast. I'm your host, Mark Osborne, and today I'm very excited to welcome my guest, Mike Walrod. Now I'm going to read Mike's bio to make sure I get this right. Mike has more than 25 years of operations experience, serving as a fractional EOS integrator, coach, and consultant for organizations focused on growth. And we're going to talk about what that means to be a EOS integrator. He has a mixture of B2B, B2C, small business ownership, and executive operations leadership experience. He received his executive operations leadership experience when he joined a consumer finance company back in 1991, and he helped foster its growth from a locally owned firm with 15 locations into a publicly traded company with 600 plus locations in 23 states. He also personally acquired 3 different businesses. In 2012, his first acquisition was an educational services business focused on assisting young adults to prepare for college admissions. The other 2, purchased in 2015 and 2017, were legal services businesses that provide support to law firms and government agencies across the nation. He has a bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of Kansas, resides in Overland Park, Kansas with his wife and 3 young children, where he enjoys spending time with his family, helping out with the local Boy Scout units, and is passionate advocate for mental health, serves as the chair for the Johnson County, Kansas Mental Health Advisory Board. Also enjoys traveling, avid fan of the Kansas Jayhawks. So Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation. So tell us a little bit of your story. You've obviously had quite an interesting entrepreneurial journey, and now you're taking some of those lessons learned and helping other companies. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So, when I was with that consumer finance company for 20 some years, that's kind of where I started with the entrepreneurial. I got the itch because we did a lot of different things. I worked with lots of different companies. And so it was growing like crazy. So it was a lot of fun. And, I did that for a long time and then kind of got to the point, it's like, I kind of want to go do this on my own and kind of see what that looks like. So back in 2014-ish, I'd made the big jump and not really sure what kind of consulting I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to continue to help small businesses and small business owners do something. I don't know what that was, strategic planning, growth, buying and selling and all that stuff. And so I dabbled in that stuff for probably, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years and really liked it. But the challenge was I just really didn't have like deep engagements. They were kind of more project based and they were fun and I liked it. But it was like 2019, end of 2019, 2020, I got my first taste of being a fractional integrator for a company that just started EOS. I could tell you the only thing I knew about EOS was that I read Traction like probably 2 times and really liked it. But I was like, I don't know if there's any companies that actually run EOS.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I had this great opportunity to be a fractional COO, fractional integrator for this company and kind of learned how to be an integrator for a company that's running EOS on a fractional basis and just loved it. I love the framework. I love the guardrails that it provides and the guidance that it provides. It was really neat, but it was a fractional engagement. And so like many things do, all good things come to an end. And so continued to do more fractional stuff, which, as a fractional executive, what the thing that I liked about that was that the engagements were longer and deeper. So you really kind of got more entrenched into the organization and with the leadership team. And so I really liked, the fractional engagement. did some fractional COO work, some fractional CEO work, and then in 2022, got another opportunity to do some fractional integrator work for a company that was rolling out EOS. Um, then, and at the same time, it's kind of funny. I also got a fractional COO role, and so I was kind of doing my own A/B testing. You
Hmm.
know, do I like fractional integrated work? Do I like fractional COO work? And I just at the end of that engagement, I was like, I really want to be an integrator. I want to just focus on being a fractional integrator for companies running EOS. And so end of 2022, 2023, that's kind of my focus has been, any company that's running EOS, it needs a fractional integrator, I'm all in, I'll help. I've had one or two short fractional COO engagements, and all it does is affirm the fact that I just really like, companies that are running EOS or thinking about running EOS, because it's just a great system for small businesses to roll out.
So, for our audience that may not be as familiar, maybe they haven't read Traction or aren't as familiar with the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS, why don't you give a little bit of a background of what is EOS and what's the value that EOS brings to the companies that you work with?
Yeah, so EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, it's basically a business operating system that was created for small to medium businesses, really businesses of all size. Like I've worked with a company that has one employee, and I've worked with people who've done it for companies that have thousands of employees. And so it's
Yeah,
just this operating system that creates a framework around people, processes, meetings, knowing your customer, all these great things. It has a framework that you can implement into your organization, and gives you a guideline on how to move forward with your organization. It provides great clarity for everybody in the organization to help them move forward.
that's right. That's right. And um, as an integrator, I think it'd be interesting for our audience to sort of understand. So, all right. So, yeah, I really welcome a framework that helps answer a lot of questions that you don't have to figure it out. You don't have to reinvent the wheel yourself. You can use this EOS framework. What's the role of an integrator? How does an integrator help companies implement that?
Yeah, so that's a great. And that's always the challenge with EOS is they have an EOS implementer and an EOS integrator, and they sound exactly the same, and people get them confused on what the role is and all that stuff. So I'm glad you pointed that out. So uh, I'm not an implementer, and so the EOS implementer is the one that introduces EOS to the organization and works with them on incorporating everything EOS into the organization. So they have an extremely valuable role in getting a company working with EOS in the correct way. An integrator, think of like a COO, or an operations person that works with the organization on a day-to-day basis. So like the nuts and bolts, working with the team every day on making sure things are working the right way. So that's the biggest, or the best definition of an integrator, I think.
Yeah, the way that I've heard folks talk about it is an implementor enters EOS into the organization, gets them set up so that they're using it, whereas an
Yeah,
integrator is inside the business, making sure that they're using EOS and getting the most out of it.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really love about the EOS framework is, as you say, it has the answers to lots of questions, so that folks kind of just don't get lost in trying to reinvent the wheel. But it
Yeah.
also puts a lot of focus on sort of creating team alignment. And I know you do a lot of work there. Talk to us a little bit about what you like about the EOS approach to building team alignment and the impact that you've seen that it can
Yeah.
make in some businesses.
Yeah. So one of the nicest things about EOS is it creates an accountability chart, which it goes through and it makes, you create what are the seats, what are the right seats for each person in the organization, and then ultimately at the beginning you create your leadership team, and that's where an integrator comes in. As an integrator, is over the whole leadership team. And so it's a little bit different because in companies not running EOS, it's usually the business owner is
Okay.
supervises the team. In EOS, there is the integrator, which is like similar to the COO, is between the business owner, which is usually called the visionary, and
Yeah.
then the leadership team. And so what I like is working with the leadership team on how are we going to execute the vision of the organization. Well, first, how are we going to create the vision of the organization? What is it? What is our 10-year, 3-year, 1-year goals, and then break those down into, what are our 90-day projects, or rocks is what they call them in EOS, and then how are we going to execute against them. And so what I personally like, one of my passions is being able to work with leadership teams and to help them figure out, how do we communicate with each other, how do we hold each other accountable, how do we grow as a team and individually, and how are we rowing in the same direction. And so the cool thing about EOS is it has lots of things in place that help you do that. Like they have what's called an L10, which is a weekly leadership meeting that's a very structured framework. It's 90 minutes long. It has a really built-in agenda, and I'm not going to go in too much detail, but it creates all these things that help you do all these things. But it still takes someone like the integrator to come in and work with people, talk with them, communicate with them, coach them, and make sure that they are, moving in the right direction. And I love, to me, that's one of the best things about being an integrator is working with the team, seeing them start on one level, and then 6 months later, they're like totally at this other huge level. I mean, they're just killing it. And partly because it's them. I mean, they just have this capacity inside that just hasn't broken out. But also it's part of the integrator and the visionary working with them, getting them to be able to see their capabilities.
That's right. That's right. Well, and you've talked a little bit about, and you sort of referenced this in your backstory of this idea of, working as a fractional integrator. And, a lot of this is sort of an emerging role within organizations. And, I've had conversations with folks who are like, what's the difference between a fractional leader versus a consultant versus a freelancer, or, someone on contract. And I'd be curious to sort of hear your definition. We can sort of see if we align on
Yeah.
what you see as a fractional versus a consultant.
Yeah, it is an interesting thing because there is, I mean, the definitions are very broad, but they're all applicable to some
Sure.
extent. And, a lot of it depends on what the organization needs. And so from my perspective, and what I, talk to prospects and my clients about is there is not, at least from my perspective, not a one size fits all approach to fractional engagement, because
Right.
each company is different and they have different needs. And so in my mind, fractional is a bridge, from where you're at to where you need and want to be. And for me as a fractional integrator, it could be a 1 month engagement, it could be an 18-month engagement. It just depends on what they're looking for. Um, Most of the time it's, not a full-time engagement, so it's a partial. So anywhere from 5 to 25 hours a week is kind of what my engagements look like, depending on what the need is. And generally what they're looking for me is they don't have an integrator. And so they are either trying to figure out, do we need a full-time integrator? Can we
Right.
afford a full-time integrator?
Right.
Or maybe, and which has been fun for me, like recently, is we got someone we think is a good integrator on staff, but they've never done it before. And we want to make
Right.
sure that they're coached correctly so that, when we're actually fully implemented on EOS, our integrator comes out swinging and they're killing it. And so I've had a couple engagements recently where it's more coaching than being the integrator, which I love that. I love, helping people figure out how to get from A to B and then do well. Um,
Yeah.
it's so yeah. So in my mind, it's a bridge to kind of give companies some um, room to figure out, what's a better long-term solution. And I think
Yeah.
that's in my mind, and I think that's where integrators are a little different than maybe something like that your profession is. So I think your engagements can be for a longer period of time. In my mind, it makes sense for someone to, find a full-time integrator on staff, because I think that is what really, when they get that, I think they're really killing it. I think that's when they really succeed with EOS.
Well, and what we see is, the old school sort of consultant used to sort of like study a problem, go come up with a solution, and then drop it off and be like, good
Yeah,
luck. I hope
yeah,
this works for you.
yeah,
And whereas a fractional role is someone who really takes ownership of the results of
yeah,
what they implement. And as you say, can serve as more of that bridge. And so oftentimes
yeah.
we see folks that are like, boy, we could really use some leadership when it comes to understanding what's the right strategy, or
Right,
of these 10 kind of smart seeming things to do, we really only have the resources to do three of them. Which
right,
are the
right.
three that are going to actually move the needle for us?
Yeah,
It's hard to know without, someone with the sort of real leadership experience. A consultant might come in, study the problem, drop it off, and wish you luck. Whereas a fractional leader can use all of their expertise and experience to say, do this one and this one. You don't need to do
oh,
all three of them.
well,
And help you focus those things in, and then work along, shoulder to shoulder to make sure that you're actually overcoming the little unforeseen obstacles on the path to
yeah.
implementing those initiatives.
I,
And a lot
I
different.
don't know about you, but in my experience, one of the reasons why I went from like those project related or project based consulting roles to more of a fractional, like a relationship engagement, is creating the proverbial three ring binder strategic plan and handing it off to them and knowing that nothing's going to happen. And so when
That's
people
right.
come to me and say, "Hey," I was like, "I'll do those things if I come along for the ride. I want to
Yeah.
absolutely make sure that the plan that we make is executed. And if it needs to be changed, let's change it. But let's move forward and don't do something just to check a box. That
That's right.
doesn't help anybody."
Well, and also there's so much risk if you think, and in the marketing and sales space. Oftentimes, marketing and sales leaders they have big personalities, and they can make a
Yeah,
big impact on the culture of an organization. And revenue is the lifeblood of your organization. So if you're
totally.
not, bringing in customers and then closing deals with those customers, there's a lot of risk there. And so working with a fractional, there's a lot less risk because they don't make this big cultural impact, because
Yeah,
they're coming in to sort of create systems, get it up and running, and they can, sort of get your house in order, help you, structure the role, structure the data that needs to be used for guiding
yeah,
decision making, structure the feedback loops and all those things. And then once it does make sense for you to have a full-time person on staff, that person's coming into something that already works, and they're not having to start,
right,
with a
right.
dumpster fire, but instead they can come in and make more of an impact right away. And you can take the time to do that executive search
Yeah,
without, feeling like we gotta hire someone today to keep the lights on. Instead, you can hire someone on a fractional basis that
right.
sets up those systems, keeps things moving in the right direction while you find that right fit for the team.
Well, and I think the other thing that we probably don't talk enough about as fractionals, at least I don't, is one of the benefits that a fractional brings to an organization is their breadth and depth of experience. Someone like yourself who's helped, so many different companies in so many different industries, and you can bring that experience to a client for whatever time period that is. I mean, that's a huge benefit for an organization to be able to tap into that expertise, um, as opposed, and it's a lot less risk than hiring someone
That's right.
who may or may not have that expertise.
That's right. And a lot less expensive for the company.
Yes,
Not
yes,
only from a just, cash outlay, but the expense of, when you hire someone full time, it's a lot harder to let them go.
sure,
Whereas if you're working with a fractional, there's a lot less, sort of risk of, well, the first quarter didn't go the way we wanted it to. Let's give them another shot. Instead, it's,
right,
if you're not seeing the results that you wanted, you can sort of pull the trigger a lot faster without, all those entanglements uh,
right,
that come. And I
yeah.
know with the companies that you work with, one of the real benefits that you bring is not only are you, a fractional integrator, and so you understand a particular set of systems, but you also have perspective on what it's like to run a business because you've also run businesses.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's what I try and and sometimes I don't remember to talk to this about prospects enough or clients enough, because I do think it's a unique attribute that I have that maybe other fractional integrators don't. But I've owned multiple businesses, B2B, B2C, and I still currently own a B2B professional services business.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that when I talk to visionaries and owners about, what do I do and what do I provide and what it's like, I was like, well, I can tell you that I've walked in your shoes and I continue to walk in your shoes. And so, you know, worrying about making payroll or worrying about some kind of change in the industry or a vendor problem or contracts or all these other things. I was like, I've done all that and I am still doing all of that. And I have a team that I've created that allows me to kind of do all this fractional integrator work. And so I've had all these things that, so the things I talk to you about, I've lived them
Right.
and continue to live them. And so when I do remember to bring that up and talk to people about it, they're like, oh yeah, it's interesting and helpful for them to understand that I'm not just a hired gun or a consultant. I've actually done some of the work.
Sure, sure. So obviously we're both really passionate about, EOS and its ability to, bring in systems that help companies thrive, but got to be mindful of your time. But before
Sure.
I let you go, why don't tell us something that's on the horizon for you or your business that you're excited about.
Yeah. So later this month, I'm getting my SEPA certification.
Is that
So it's
certified exit planning?
yeah. So certified exit planning certificate, and
Uh-huh.
the reason why is, when I go in and work with organizations, one of the things that I am doing is helping them create value and
Yeah,
improving things and structuring them for things that happen later. And one of the things I've noticed, a lot of these organizations, they're not focused on the value of their organization. They're focused on maybe the bottom line, but they're not thinking about how do I position my company for when I want to leave?
yeah,
And I'm in a great, as the COO or the integrator or strategic advisor, I'm in this great position to bring along some of that knowledge and help them position their company for, um, improving their value to some multiple. So they gives them the ability to do a transaction if they want, or if they, or just to enjoy the fact that their company is worth more than it was
that's right.
before. So I think I go through all of that in a couple weeks. So I'm excited about being able to offer that to my either current clients or future clients.
That is exciting. So
Yeah.
for folks that have been listening, and they're like, yeah, we run on EOS. We're firm believers in that. And maybe we aren't hitting on all the cylinders that we'd like to. Maybe we could benefit. Give us the pitch. Like, why should they, want to work with you as as a fractional integrator to help them really get the most out of EOS?
Yeah, so I think the thing about me is, fractional. I'm a big fan of fractional integrators and giving companies room to breathe. I think what I bring to the table is I've worked with companies, probably 15 to 20 different industries, sizes. So I'm pretty industry agnostic. I think one of the things that I really like to work with are, visionaries and leadership teams that are excited about change, that want to fix things and want to grow and want to move forward, whether it's a $1 million revenue company or a $100 million revenue company. To me, the important factor is a team that is interested in getting better and growing. And I love working with those teams. And so whether you're, 1 month into EOS or 3 years into EOS, I've worked with all those different types of companies, and I would love to jump in and help figure things out.
Fantastic. So, Mike, what's the best way for folks to get in touch with you?
The best way is either, find me on LinkedIn. So Mike Walrod on LinkedIn. You can always get me on my profile or send me an email, which is mike@insightbusiness.com. And Insight is INCITE
Okay.
business. So try to be tricky
Like
with my name.
insight to riot.
That's right. That's right.
That's awesome. Well, Mike, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. It's been great.
All right. Talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
Thank you for joining this episode of the B2B Growth Blueprint podcast. We hope you've gained insights to grow your business. If you enjoyed this discussion, please rate, comment, like on your favorite platform, and share to others who will find it useful. Do you know a CEO, founder, or leader at an early stage B2B services, tech, or SaaS company who would like to be a guest and share their story? Send us a note. Let's schedule a conversation.